Hello, everyone. It's me again. Just thought I would offer a kind of a midweek devotion. The weeks are getting longer and longer for me, and maybe that's true for you as well, as we continue to go through this really unusual time. I've been reading this week from a book in the Old Testament, the book of Lamentations, and it really kind of spoke to me. And so I thought I might share it with you in the hopes that perhaps it would speak to you as well. It's a beautiful, poetic book thought to have written by Jeremiah, although many scholars would dispute that, but regardless, it's a book of beautiful lamentations. In other words, just thoughts and poems about lament, about loss, about grief. It's written at a time when there was much to grieve, there was much to lament, the time when Babylon was laying siege to Jerusalem, and really very disturbing, difficult time to live through. But out of that time, out of that challenge, come just profound words of hope. There's lament, and then there's hope. The beginning of this book begins with the words, "How lonely sits the city that once was full of people." Thinking about that and just thinking about pictures that I've seen of old Jerusalem, which is just empty right now. It's lonely looking. Even cities like New York just don't look the same in the midst of this pandemic. They all look rather lonely right now. How lonely sits the cities that once were so crowded and so bustling and so full of life. And so we can lament, just as those people that were living in Jerusalem at the time lamented, because we too have things that we're lamenting, things that we're missing right now. This has been called a pandemic of disappointment, along with all the health concerns, all the people who are dying, all the medical workers who are really risking their health for us, all the people who have lost jobs, whose livelihoods would have been affected. But there's also just been a lot of things that we're just missing. I received a word officially that we're not going to be able to have our Confirmation Week at Lutheridge this summer. We're not going to be able to go on our mission trip this summer. And there's lots of things like that that we also are lamenting, that we also are missing. And it's important to name those things, just to be aware of those things and to be thinking about, what is this virus taking away from us? What is it taking away from you? What are you missing out on because of this virus? I know we're entering into prom season and graduation season, and there's a lot of things that a lot of people are missing right now and really lamenting. And if nothing else, the book of Lamentations reminds us that it is okay to lament. It's okay to say, I miss these things. It makes me sad. These things are not happening. Lamentations 3 continues with some of this lament, but then it makes a remarkable turn, and that's what I'm getting to. So first, one last lament in chapter 3. "My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. So I say, gone is my glory and all that I had hoped for from the Lord. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me." But, the writer goes on to say, in the very next words, "But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." These remarkable words of hope in the midst of a terrible time are words that have inspired generations of people of faith, and even given words to one of our great hymns, "Great is thy faithfulness." Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. I love those words, and have been really reflecting on those words this week, and reflecting on these places in Scripture where people have gone through some really terrible times, terrific hardships, and still have not lost hope. You know, I love that little word "but" in this book of Lamentations. After lamenting all these things, after grieving all these things, the writer is able to say, but still I have hope. There's one more of those places in the book of Habakkuk, which I thought I might share with you today as well. Another place where there's a lament that turns to hope. And so the prophet Habakkuk writes in chapter 3, though the fig tree does not blossom, and no fruit is on the vines, though the produce of the olive fails, and the fields yield no food, though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there is no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will exult in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer, and makes me tread upon the heights. Did you catch it there? That little word. In this case, yet. Though all these things are happening to Habakkuk, yet he continues to exult in the Lord, yet he continues to rejoice. And that's our invitation, I believe, as well. Though all these things are happening, that we can and should lament, that we can and should miss and grieve, yet we can continue to rejoice in God, because God's faithfulness to us is great. God's mercies are new every morning, and God promises never to leave us or to forsake us. Our mourning, Psalm 30 points out, our mourning always ends with dancing. And even when we put on sackcloth out of the lament that we have, it is always replaced with joy. Scripture right now is a profound source of hope for me, and I hope that it is for you as well. Because Scripture is real, it's honest. It identifies the ways in which we are losing out on things before it turns to hope. So my invitation to you today is to go ahead and lament. Go ahead and be sad for those things that you are missing out on because of this pandemic. But do that as people who have not lost hope. Do that as people who continue to rejoice in God, who continue to look to God, whose mercies are new every morning. God gives us hope that this pandemic cannot take away, and for that we can rejoice. May God bless you and keep you and continue to fill you with hope as you lament and as we all look forward to the day when our life can get back to normal, when we can come back to this place to worship and give thanks to the Lord, whose faithfulness is great. Thanks be to God.